want to talk about stepping stones today. A stepping stone is an action that leads to something better, something greater, a more ideal outcome. So, for example, going to Kalamazoo Valley Community College might be a stepping stone to get into the University of Michigan. Or working as an intern at a law firm might be a stepping stone to begin a career as a lawyer down the road. There are spiritual stepping stones as well. A spiritual stepping stone is a faith-filled action on our part that leads to something better, that leads to a more profound experience of God's presence and power. When we get to the book of Joshua, chapter 3, we find the people of God, the Israelites, in a stepping stone moment. What's going on is they're trying to get into the promised land that God had for them, a land flowing with milk and honey, the milk and honey of God's presence and power. But in order to get there, they've got to cross the Jordan River, which was a big deal because the Jordan River was overflowing. It was at flood stage. But they had seen God do a miracle 40 years before this Jordan River situation. Let me just give you a quick history of the Old Testament in about 2 minutes. The Israelites, the people of God, were slaves in Egypt. And then, Moses said to Pharaoh, the leader of the Egyptians, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh's like, "Nope." But then God sent 10 plagues and lice and frogs and blood and stuff like that. So Pharaoh's like, "Get out of here, go." And then he changed his mind. As the Israelites were leaving, Pharaoh's like, we just let our slave labor leave. And so what happened was the Israelites were fleeing the Egyptians who were trying to chase them and kill them. And then in front of them, 40 years again before Joshua 3, is the Red Sea. So they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. They're stuck between the Egyptians who are trying to kill them, or at least take them back into slavery, and a Red Sea they cannot cross unless God shows up. And you know the story. God parts the Red Sea and enables the Israelites to cross by on dry land. And then when the Egyptians are still chasing and they're in the Red Sea, the water caves in on them. So the people of God are free, but they're still not in the promised land. They're not where they used to be, but they're not where they're going. And so they wandered around in the wilderness after that Red Sea event. They wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. You may not know this, but it only takes about 6 weeks, 300 miles to get from the Red Sea into the promised land. Why did it take them 40 years? I don't know. I think it's because they did not trust God enough. Even though they had seen a miracle, they kept acting faithlessly at times. But now, after 40 years, Moses has handed the baton to Joshua, a young leader, and they're ready to cross into the promised land, which is just beyond the Jordan River. But crossing the Jordan is a big deal because, as I said, the Jordan River was at flood stage. Usually it's only like 3 feet deep, 100 feet wide. During the spring, it's 2,640 feet wide, about a half mile. And it's not 3 feet deep, it's 10 feet deep. It's flooding, it's turbulent, it's a roaring, raging river that they've got to cross to get to the promised land. And here's what God says to Joshua, and Joshua tells the priests. He says, "Tell the priests who are carrying the Ark of the Covenant, which has the 10 Commandments, to step into that roaring, raging river, the Jordan River. And as soon as they step in, I'll do my part," God says. I'll stop the water from flowing. It'll pile up in a heap. And then the 2 million of you, a lot of whom were there during the Red Sea crossing, you'll be able to pass through the Jordan River on dry ground into the promised land I have for you. But God basically says to them, you go first. You maybe had a sibling who said, you go first and I'll go. God's saying to his people, you go first, you step in, and if you step in, you'll see me do my part, but you've got to step. And it's a big deal for the priests because they're carrying the Ark of the Covenant, which has the 10 Commandments. It's a big deal. And I got to imagine that the front 2 or 3 priests who are carrying the Ark are thinking, Why do I have to be in the front? Why do I have to step in first? And these guys behind me, they have to see what happens. But they step in. And by the way, it's kind of odd, I think, that God asked the priests to go first, who are carrying the Ark of the Covenant. Why do you think that is? I think God's saying, don't send the military first. Don't send the archers, the swordsmen. I want the priests to go, who are carrying the Ark of the Covenant. I want them to go first, because I want you to know the battle does not belong to you. There are things you can do. You can step in, but you can't cause the river to dry up in a heap. Only I can do that. And what you may not know is that the Ark of the Covenant, between the cherubim of the Ark, the Israelites believed was the presence of God. And so God is not saying to his people, you go first and I'll be way back here, I'll catch up. God is saying, you step in, and when you step in, know that I am with you at the Ark of the Covenant. My presence will go with you. It's kind of like what Jesus said at the end of Matthew's gospel. He said to his people, go into all the world, you step in and make disciples, go everywhere, make disciples and baptize people. And then Jesus said, I am with you always. You go, but no, I'm with you as you go. And you know what happens. They step into the Jordan River, and way upstream, God stops the river from flowing, all the water goes down, and 2 million Israelites pass through the Jordan River on dry ground toward the Promised Land. It's a miracle. And by the way, the priest had to hold the ark in the middle of the Jordan riverbed for a long time. 2 million people had to cross. It's a big deal. And they crossed it. God was testing them to see if they remembered what happened 40 years before at the Red Sea. God was saying to them, before at the Red Sea, I parted the waters. I did my thing first and then asked you to follow through. But now I'm asking you, based upon what you know about me, God says, to step in and trust me to do whatever I need to do to protect you, to preserve you, to lead you. If you step in, you will see him. And they do. I wonder if you've seen God in the Red Sea of your past. Maybe God's done miracles in your past, and he wants you to remember past things he's done so that when you come upon a present challenge, a present crossing, a flooding, raging Jordan River, that you trust God enough to step in so that you see him do his thing. Well, the Israelites all crossed through. Once they were all through, again, the priests are still in the middle of the Jordan riverbed. In chapter 4, which Scott just read, God says, hold on a second. Send 12 men, one from each of the tribes of Israel, back into the river. It's still dried up. And I'll ask them to each grab a stone. Not like the little stones you got this morning when you came in, but a stone they had to actually throw on their shoulder, a big stone. And then God says, take that big stone from the Jordan riverbed to the place you're going and set it up when you get there. Why? In that culture at that time, people took stones from where they experienced a powerful movement of God, and they took it with them to the place they were going. Why? So that they would remember what God had done for them back there. Oh God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. Stones were reminders, memorials of what God had done for them. And what God is asking them and asking us, I think, and here's where I want to sort of land this morning, is do we trust God to do a miracle in our present and future crossing challenges? Do we trust God enough in the future, based upon what he's done in our past, to step into the water when he asks us to? Do you want to know that God is real? that God is who he says he is, that God exists, that he's powerful, that he's large and in charge? Do you want to know? Do you want to see the power of God in your life? Head nod will do. I do. And sometimes the only way we get to experience that God is faithful and powerful and present and that he loves us and he is good, the only way sometimes for us to know that is for us to step first. We don't get a chance sometimes to do a sort of a detailed risk analysis when God nudges us to do something. You just step in faith. And when we step in and step out, God will show up and do his thing. I wonder how many times in my own life I was up against a raging Jordan River and God was nudging me to do something, to sacrifice something, to commit something, to make a new decision, start a new habit, quit an old habit. And the river looked too daunting to me. And so either I stayed still or I turned back and went to the safer place. I wonder how many times I missed a miracle of God because I stayed on the safe side of the river. Isaiah 42:3, God says, when you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. And the only way to know that God keeps his promises is to step into the river. Based on a nudge from a God you can't see, but is more real than the air you breathe. And you step. We have, as a church, had many river crossings in the last 16 months. I've been your pastor for 16 months, and I have watched you come up against a flooding Jordan River, and instead of turning back in fear, you've stepped in. You've leaned in. And because you stepped in, you've seen him. We've seen him. 16 months ago, you were up against the Jordan River, needed to hire a pastor, and God was asking you to take a faith-filled risk, and you hired me 16 months ago. And that was risky, big time, but you did it. Some of you might regret it. And then, when I came here 16 months ago, we had maybe four people in our church under 21. And yet we felt God was nudging us into the river to hire a kids ministry director. And so we hired Hunter. And we have seen, since we've stepped in, we've seen that God is with us and we have a growing and vibrant kids ministry. God has shown up. And not only that, we actually have a youth ministry that's starting to ramp up with middle schoolers and high schoolers. We have stepped in and we have seen him. Other ways that you've stepped in, FCC, and have crossed the River Jordan, trusting in a God you can't see but you know is real, is by inviting your friends and family to come and experience the love of God in Christ with us. In the 16 months that we've been together, God has grown our congregation nearly 40%. And we've watched not just the growth, but we've watched many of the newbies get baptized or become members like we're celebrating today. We've had 20, at the end of this today, we'll have about 17, 18 baptisms just in this fiscal year. Our fiscal year changes after this is the last Sunday. July 1st, we start a new fiscal year. We've seen 18 or so get baptized. We've seen 20 new members. Stuff we have not seen FCC in about 15 years. We've stepped in and we've seen him. God was asking us to take a risk and do some ministries to our community, especially when it comes to young families, to step in. We didn't budget things, and we didn't really have a template for how to do things, but God was asking us to have a kids fest last summer. Next one's August 8th, it's coming up, and to do a spring thing in April. Again, we had no template, but Hunter and the team sensed God was calling us to do this, and so we had these events without budgeting, without really knowing what we were doing, and God has blessed. Hundreds of people came to those events, and many people, some people, have trickled into the life of the church through those two events. Yeah, clap, you can make some noise. This is Celebration Sunday. You're allowed to make noise. I'm not done yet, though. I'm not done yet. So God was asking us to step into the Jordan River by shifting a little bit our perspective on missions. Not just giving to missions, which is important, but going in mission on Monday. God is calling us not just to support missionaries who are going, but to actually go as missionaries on Monday, to bring his love to people out there who need his love. Not to shove religion down people's throat. The last thing we need is more religion. But to draw people into a relationship with Jesus, the one who can redeem the worst parts of our past and make all things new, the one who can break every chain and give us life to the full. That's what we're called to do, not give religion, relationship. We've also sensed God calling us to step into partnering with a local elementary school, Washington Street Elementary. We didn't know what that meant. We still don't know what it means, but we sense God nudging us. And so we have a partnership with Washington Street. Some of you are going to walk with the kids. Some of you are going to reading classes. When it was Staff Appreciation Week, we went in and brought some snacks and just loved on them because we felt like Jesus wanted us to. We did it. FCC, you've stepped in. Another way you've stepped in is we have 30% more people giving financially to support the mission of God through this church to make Jesus famous than we did when I first started. We have seen an increase in our giving, 19% compared to last year. All of this to say, FCC, I am so proud of you for stepping into the raging river, hoping and expecting to see God do his part. Make some noise again. Yeah. But we're not done. As much as I would like to camp just past the Jordan River and kind of just go like this and take a breather, we're turning the page on this past year. Again, today's our last Sunday in this fiscal year. And I want us to remember what God has done this year because he's done some amazing things. But we're going to have river crossings coming up. Listen, we've only put a dent in our community with the good news of Christ's love. Just a dent, small dent. I can't rest. You can't rest. Because God won't rest until every single person in Otsego and Allegan County is experiencing the kind of joy-filled, life-giving, eternal friendship with God through Christ that you are enjoying and I am enjoying. So we have other rivers to cross. The question is, when we cross this Jordan and face some other raging rivers, other challenges, will we remember this? The Jordan. Will we remember the Red Sea? And will we trust God enough to step in, hoping that he'll show up? Because he does. I gave you, you should have gotten a stone. Pick up your stone. Put that up. If you did not get one, there'll be some at the entrances. There's some in the back there. Yeah. I want you to take this stone. The reason why you got a stone, again, was not to stone me, but to remember. Stones were memorials to a miracle of God. And I want you to remember with this stone miracles that God has done for you. Maybe you want to write the date of your conversion to Christ. Maybe you want to write the date of your baptism when you actually literally stepped into water. Maybe you want to write the date or mark a moment when God showed up and did a miracle for you in your past. He brought you through that illness. He brought you through that conflict. He brought you through that challenge. Jot a date, jot a note. Remember what he did in the past, but may this stone remind you when you come up to another Jordan River, as you will. You will. Not if you come up to a Jordan, when you come up to another river. And let this stone remind you that God is faithful, God is good, and may you, based on that, jump into the present river God is calling you to cross. And I guarantee you, you will see God. The God who nudged you into the river will show up and carry you through the river. Do you want to experience not a boring religion, in which you're in control, but a thrilling, adventurous relationship with the God who made you, knows you, and loves you, and is limitless. Is that what you want? Yeah. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for what you're up to in the life of our church. Thank you for the rivers we've crossed. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen. We just knew you were nudging us, and we stepped in, and we've seen you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for causing the water to wall up so that we can pass through on dry ground. God, we want to move into the promised land of your presence and your power. Help us not to stay on the safe side of the Jordan, but to cross it, knowing that you are with us, that your will won't take us where your presence won't sustain us, that if you, God, lead us to it, you will see us through it. In the name of Christ, we celebrate today. Amen.